This is an energy of also of completions, a full moon. And the full moon for October, it's kind of fitting. No, it's not in Scorpio, but it does involve the planet Mars. This is all astrology. Yeah, my name is G. And we're going to talk about October. October is here. We are looking at relationships. Yeah, so let's take a look at this. We got Mars on the screen because we're having a full moon, and it is on October 17th. It's a full moon, October 17th, and the time is it's in the AM. I'm in the Central Daylight Time Zone, adjust for where you live. And so that we're clear about this, people often say things, and it's not about being wrong. It's just people will say things like, well, it's already a full moon here. Gee, what are you talking about? Like, I'm watching this video on the 14th and it's already a full moon, right? Because when the moon gets to that peak of fullness, right, where it's completely full, it's a process. It doesn't just all of a sudden jump from 1 minute there's a sliver and then all of a sudden there's a full moon. No, if you really pay attention, you'll see that little by little it gets brighter and more full, right? And of course, if you've got clear skies, you can do that. But if you don't, then you're like, okay, I don't see it. And that's part of the reason why we don't get to see all the stages of it. So the full moon can look full because it reaches that peak on this day at this time. But up until this day and this time, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. And so it's moving in small increments. And with that, it looks full. So many folks who talk about full moon energy say that we actually are starting that full moon cycle. You can feel the energy of it like 3, 4, even 5 days in advance because a full moon represents an ending, a closure, and a completion. It's like we're done with something. Okay. And the full moon, well, I should say moon cycles, moon events, lunar events. These are about our feelings and our emotions because it's the moon. It's a full moon in Aries. Right. So the full moon in Aries at 24 degrees. You see the moon there. Got it drawn in with the arrow. 24 degrees, 33 minutes. Aries. We got to know all the Aries keywords to understand this full moon. What about Aries energy? Right? What about it? What do you know about it? Some will say, well, it's Aries, it's the head. It sure is. It's the head. But that's not all. There's a whole lot more. Aries is pretty feisty, right? It's the starter. I like to initiate things. It's literally like if you're thinking of a car and you got that starter, you like without that starter, you're screwed. It ain't starting. You ain't going nowhere. It initiates, right? That's Aries energy. And it loves to start. It loves something new. It loves to be the pioneer. If it's starting something it's never done before, that's why I kind of liken Aries energy a little bit kind of like definitely pioneer energy. I even kind of use experimentation, but not scientific experimentation. You follow? Aquarius we would talk about as like scientific experimentation. Aries isn't like that necessarily. Aries is more about experimenting as in, ooh, I've never been there. Ooh, I've never tried that. Ooh, I wonder what that's like. Let's find out. Adventurous, courageous, fearless Aries. And it's willing to fight for something. It's willing to stand up, usually for those who are weaker or downtrodden. Aries can be impulsive and impatient. Along with being fired up and fiery, it brings those sporadic bursts of energy. So it can be known to rise to the occasion, literally. I mean, Mars is the ruler of Aries, right? So we can kind of understand how this Mars energy works when we think about it at its most primal, most basic way. Literally, it's not a sustaining type of energy. It can't rise to the occasion and stay there. No, it's not human then, right? And Mars is definitely human, but it really can be more in sync with um, survival instincts. And I gotta, if the fight or flight thing, like it can't fight all the time because it just doesn't have the strength or the energy for that. It's not a machine, even though sometimes we call it the tool because it lacks using its brain usually. And usually it's so fired up, so passionate about something, so driven with what it feels fired up about. It kind of just acts on it and goes at it, right? It likes to chase. It likes to be first. It likes to be in front, right? It's one thing to be first, to kind of like lead the way, but it truly wants to be the leader of the pack too, right? Like I'm winning the race as opposed to people are following me because I'm a leader. There's a difference there, right? There's a huge difference. And we got to sometimes sort that out in our brain. How am I using my Aries and my Mars energy? Am I actually leading? Is there people who who look up to either my actions or my words? Is there something there that is inspiring for others? In whatever capacity, whatever degree, however that fits into your life, right? Because, sometimes we get very glamorous in our mind when we start thinking, oh, people will fall all over me and people will just throw money at me or gifts at me, or do people worship me, or how many thumbs and likes? Same thing. How many thumbs and likes and hearts do I get? Or how many views, how many followers do I have? Like that's all that glamour shit. That's all that illusions and delusions where it's a perception of success, a perception of how well I'm doing, even though it may not truly reveal how you're actually doing. You see? So the Mars energy being that leader and being the one who wants to be in front, being the one who wants to be in first place, or being the one who's like, no one's ever done this before. Think astronaut energy. No one's ever done this before. The shit could be dangerous. Hell yeah. And Mars has the courage because it will see beyond the fear of its own body because it kind of feels invincible even. When Mars gets there's something about that Mars energy and the youthfulness, the naivete even, where it just feels almost indestructible sometimes. And it feels as though if it should happen to die, well, at least it went out with a bang, or it went out fighting, that makes it okay. It almost seems worthy then. So Mars energy on its most primal, most basic type of expression is going to be about survival instincts. What do I got to do to survive? What do I got to do to be active and physical? Because to be first, right? But I think as Mars is aging and growing up, which is what we wanted to do, over time, the Mars energy, it has to go a little bit further away from the body because the body only lasts for so long. It doesn't stay with us, right? We age and we lose that. So over time, the Mars energy learns to kind of develop some of its other attributes, some of its other powers and gifts. And Mars energy on a higher level, I often compare it to the fine wine, where there are things that it just isn't capable of when it's really young. Like a fine wine, like it's really young. There's just certain notes, there's certain I'm like the developed layers of flavor that you can't cheat on. It's time. You have to let time do its work. I often also think of, for any of you out there, who makes a good chicken stock or a good beef stock or a fish stock, especially if you got these big bones, right? If you got like stock that you're making from those hearty, whether it's the beef hooves or the femurs, like all those different hard bones, right? That you would need to get like the gelatin. Um, it's one thing to just pop that stuff on the stove after you've roasted it because it needs to be roasted first. Well, that takes time and heat and pressure. And that's kind of the life of Mars. It kind of needs the time, the heat, the pressure. Mars loves a challenge. It loves the challenge. It loves to be pressured, even though it might not it just loves to fight. It loves to have something it has to fight for because it's got to use that energy that it already has within it some way, somewhere. It has that fire pent up in it. It's almost anger energy. And so it has to have like this focus of, well, where do I direct this towards? You know? And so we think of the time and that stock on the stove receiving, at first it had the heat on the bones and being roasted, and then it got to the stove top and mixed with the water, and then it has to have more heat for days. Have you ever had the difference between a stock someone made and it was less than 12 hours on the stovetop? And then if you had it tasted it 24 hours, and then what about the 72-hour stock? There's no comparison. It's like night and day. The amount of time from 12 to 72 is huge, huge, huge. You can't rush it. If you take that shortcut, if you skip that whole, if you skip allowing that, what you're doing is you're taking away the magic that the time works on that type of energy. And time, there's no substitute for it. There's just not. So that's my version of comparison of don't apologize for your Aryan ways and your Mars energy, yet understand you might be a little naive, you might be harsh, you might be a little quick to jump to something and you're not thinking. So you have to kind of just recognize, okay, yeah, I was super impulsive. I was very reactionary. And I don't think there's anybody who doesn't have Mars energy, who can't recognize some of these things that I'm saying about themselves. And that's what the astrology is about. It's not about pointing the fingers. It's about, okay, when was I like this? And oh my God, I can see how I acted that way. And that takes us to the next meaning of Mars, acting. Not acting as in Hollywood, but acting as in literally the actions of my body. How do I act? And how does my body function? Does it function? Right. And as we age, we start to go a little bit further away from the physicalness of the body because it's not as youthful anymore because Mars is really strong. Right. In Aries, it rules Aries really strong in Scorpio. But if you were to have Mars, say, in uh, I don't want to say Capricorn. Mars actually does really, that's the magic of Capricorn energy. Mars actually does really good in Capricorn. It's doesn't make any sense, but it does. I guess because Mars is the soldier and Capricorn is more like the general and it gives it the orders. So Mars energy can be very disciplined in that energy when it's taking the orders and it understands its orders and it follows through on its orders. It does really well. It's because it has a place to focus that energy and it's given it goals to work towards, and it just works out. But if you have like Mars in Cancer, if you have Mars in Libra, right, the place of its detriment, it's not going to work out so well, right? It's going to be very difficult energy to work with. So over time, these time working on the Mars energy, we learned that it might not be so much about our physical body and our appearance, because that's Mars energy, Aries energy, our appearance, the appearance of our body. And when we age, right, and time sets in, the dark hair turns gray and we might get a little bit more round, right? We start growing horizontally as opposed to, in different ways. We might slow down. We might not be able to move as fast and spontaneously as we once did. Mars, like gymnasts, that's Mars, strong Mars energy. I often think of them as soldiers, right? Because they were born for war. So we lose a lot of the youthful, impulsive, energetic bursts. So we might still get the burst, but they might not be as strong. And so what happens? We have to acclimate. And over time, we realize, well, damn, I can't rely on this anymore. What the hell am I going to do? So we got to start using the other part of Aryan energy. We got to start using the higher the higher meaning of it, literally, which is still the head. Because when Mars is young, it kind of uses its head like a battering ram. You ever see some of those? If you watch football at all, you'll see they put their heads down and they charge, and it's like, oh shit! Because I think of me and Aries in the 12th, and damn, whew, it just hurts to even watch that, to see it. I can feel the pain and I'm like, okay, I can't even look at that. But what else? We got to get away from using the head and the physical parts of it, right? So we start using and developing the mind. The mind, the higher octave of Mars, the higher octave of Aries is using that mind. And so it goes from maybe we might take actions that might be inspiring, right? And if we're using our mind, we've thought first. These are things that we have thought through, and they're not as spontaneous, although they can be surprising to others. But because we've used our mind now, we're thinking them through. We're thinking things through. So this is just to give us little examples of the different ways that Mars energy, that Aries energy can express in our lives. And the question is, where is this in your life? Like, where are you at with your Mars energy? How does your Mars energy express? How does your Aries energy express? And again, no, like, A, B, C, D, there's no failures. It's simply about self-awareness and seeing at what moment, at what time, how did I act? Did I act like a 2-year-old? Did I act like a 6-year-old? Did I act my age? Or did I act, like an adolescent? And I think we all oscillate. I think we typically will oscillate in and out of different variations depending upon what's going on in the sky, like what is happening where and how are we expressing, because Mars can be super optimistic and even kind of childlike many times. And there's something youthful and fun even that can be with Mars because it loves its game. It's not the game necessarily, but it says, I'm willing to try that. Let's go do that. It's got this super adventurous spirit to it, right? And so it's the courage and the inspiration that is really wonderful. And then when it gets to that older, more mature level, sometimes forced because I don't have this as an option anymore, we have no other choice but to start really using the mind itself as opposed to the head. Stop using it as a battering ram. Start thinking, start developing the mind. So we start thinking before speaking. We start thinking before leaping. We start thinking before acting. And that is a wonderful Mars energy because then others can see, they can see that fiery ass Mars, that fight, that someone who's willing to fight. And then Mars becomes this inspirational leader in a way because others can see, oh my God, you're not fighting for yourself. You're fighting for others. You're fighting for someone who can't fight. But it doesn't have to necessarily mean that I'm fighting like this, right? Mars figures out other ways. It figures out other ways. And so when we think of the action and our body and our appearance, because there's like so many different ways that this energy shows up, because Mars is the ascendant, right? Aries is the first house. It is how I appear. And so that aging stuff that occurs, and then there's that youthful stuff, but it's not all. There's so much more. What about the color of my skin? What about the clothing that I wear? The way that I'm dressing and wear my hair or don't wear my hair? All those things have to do with how we're received. People look at us and they make a judgment call. They look at what we're wearing and they're like, oh, you work doing this for a living, or oh, you're boring, or oh, that looks like an exciting, fun person. They dress fun, they dress youthful. Right? You can see people who dress very youthful. They may wear their hair in a very youthful way, and all of a sudden you might think, wow, they're, especially if you see them from a side angle or from behind, you might like, oh my God, that's a youngster. And then when you get up close and start talking to them, you're like, oh shit, I didn't realize, and that's okay. But the appearance is big with Mars because some individuals, and I speak now in particular to those who are considered like second in society, the second and the third, and maybe even the invisibles, the brown skin, the black skin, the feminine energy, even for sure. Those are the individuals whose rights seem to be less and less and less and much smaller. And so we think of our body and the actions of our body and the freedoms of our actions and the body autonomy, our freedoms. Mars loves Aries is all about the freedom of my body. I will do with my body what I want. It is my body. Therefore, what happens with my body and within my body is about my body. We also think of the ego because Aries energy is youthful and young, and it really, really, really likes things that are about self. People can look at it and be like, holy shit, never met someone so selfish in my life. Where it's like, I did that. I was in first place. I led the way. I was the leader of that team. Me, right? The letter I and me, big with Aries energy. It goes from me to we when it's mature. Okay. So the moon is a full moon, which means it's a let go, it's a release, it's an end of something. You're looking for 24 degrees to find out where this happens in your chart. You got to have a chart. And because it's a full moon, we use an orb of 2 degrees. So that would mean at 22 degrees and at 26 degrees, we're looking to see, do we have anything in our chart between those degrees? Now, that's the general rule. For this event, we're going to go bigger because up in the sky, we have something both at 24, Eris, feminine warrior, sister to Mars. She is angry, just like Mars. She's ready for battle, just like Mars. She wants a seat at the table. She's tired of not being heard. She's pissed. It's women energy for sure. Okay. We have Chiron at the other side. A wound about my body, a wound about the appearance, a wrong that had been done to me in the past. That is Chiron energy. Sometimes it's a wound that you incurred when you were very small. Sometimes it's a wound that you got from a previous time, whether you call it another lifetime or however that works for you. I sometimes will just say a soul history and a soul memory. I feel like sometimes that works out better for people because everyone has a different religious belief, and astrology does not exclude any religion. So you kind of give me a different word if you would like me to say, but whoever your creator is created Chiron, created the moon, created Eris, created Hygeia, created Saturn, created Mars, created Jupiter, created the damn planet, okay? Created the universe. So you see, it's all here. So this orb is going to be bigger, right? I would say technically that we can take this orb. We're taking it to 19 degrees of Aries. Especially if you have objects between 19 and 20 and 21 and 22 and 23, because that adds to more objects being built in here. But because up in the sky, we've got Eris and the moon at 24 and we have Chiron at 21, we're going to 19 degrees of Aries to almost 28 degrees of Aries. This event and the node at the 6, and we think of the healthcare system and the bodies and the freedom of our bodies, and we think of women specifically because there's a lot going on with women and healthcare freedom, because people who aren't women don't comprehend what that is. How could they? They don't have a female body. Like if you don't have a freaking uterus, you don't really understand all that stuff. You don't get how that affects you mentally and emotionally and physically, and how it's a vital part of, well, that's actually what separates you from not being a man. So women's healthcare, a big, big deal here, and women's rights and access to healthcare and all that healthcare for a woman involves. And a woman having the freedom and the freedom of having the privacy and the discussion with her and her doctor, and it being conjunct Eris, the values and something I'm willing to fight for. And I'm really angry, Eris, because nobody has been listening to what I have to say. It's as though my voice doesn't matter, even though it's my body. How can that be? In what world does that make sense? It doesn't. So Eris is super effing pissed, rightfully so. That when I think back in time And even with the indigenous cultures, and I think of their teachings, not that I'm some expert, I'm not, but just the access that I've had, the power that they recognize within feminine energy is pronounced. And they recognize it to the degree where, I mean, they honor it. They don't dismiss it because they realize you don't want to mess with that power. 24 degrees, when we tie that into this, 24 degrees, this is an energy of also of completions. It's also an energy of closure. It's an energy of understanding and possibly forgiveness, and possibly the reality of when is the healing going to come, right? I now have the understanding to this. Can there be some forgiveness involved in this? That can happen here too. Okay. We think of soldiers, we think of war, of course, and the end of war, because Mars is all about war, and so is Aries. And we think of the public when we think of the moon, and fighters. Eris is here. This is Mars and Eris getting together. So we think of literally people who are at war, and lots of different wars going on, right? The ones that aren't even being called wars, but yeah, definitely still wars, still battles going on and people dying. So an ending and a closure, and the 24 degrees can also represent public figures, politicians. It can represent institutions of society, working for institutions. Sometimes we say healing institutions, so we sometimes think hospitals even. This can be prisons as well, right? And that's some old school teaching, but just think of Pisces, think of 12th house energy, think of Jupiter as well and Neptune, and think of across the pond, what's going on over there, foreigners, foreign lands, foreign languages. Think of long distances even. Think of water energy. And when you mix water and fire together, ooh, you get boiling water, things get heated up. That 12th house, that 24 degree, can also be a dissolving of something and things being confused, right? Because it's confusion energy. It's the murky waters. When I say water, think deep below in the ocean. And so we're talking, it's hard to see under there. There's no light. So I'm not sure what the hell's going on. Well, the ego can be part of this, and a person who was in power. Okay. And confusion then setting in because it's a closure and an ending. So let's back this up just a little bit more and get a bigger picture here, because Chiron's part of this, and so is Eris, the warrior. Chiron being the wounds of the body, but again, it also speaks about the past. And at 21, Chiron energy at the 21 degree is the beliefs. This is about my beliefs about the freedoms, the beliefs about the wounds of the past, the beliefs about my body and the future of my body, my appearance, and my body autonomy. So we think of judges, Jupiter. You heard me mention Jupiter because of the 24 degrees. We think of judges, we think of the Supreme Court in the United States. And I only say US because that's where I'm at. So give me input for where you live. But the judicial system and courtrooms, but judges and the funkiness that's going on there, right? And the Supreme Court justices and the little faith that the people have in them now. We got Mars at 22. 22 sounds familiar, right? Yeah. And look where it's at in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is the public. The moon is the sign that rules Cancer, the planet that rules Cancer. So it's more feminine energy. Mars could be a surgeon, can also be soldiers. Mars typically carries a weapons, can carry a knife. So this would likely be abortions for sure. So Mars, take a look, 22 degrees, an exact square, a strong square to this full moon, to Eris, and to Chiron. It's strong. It's stress and tension. Mars at 22 in Cancer. And it also has another square going on over here, because if we have the moon at 24, that means the sun is across the way in another sign at 24 in Libra. That means Mars is squaring that as well. But look how much stuff we got in Libra here from 17 degrees and on. Remember I said the orb would be at 19, but look at Libra. We got Black Moon at 17, Estrella at 18, You see that? We've got a Vulcan energy at 19. We have Juno exactly at 24. Professional partnerships, significant relationships, marriages. This is lawyers. All right. This is the justice system and the courtroom and Lady Liberty. This is Libra energy, equality and fairness. The sun is here. They're all at 24, and so is Spica. The fixed star of Spica is at the opposite end of this full moon. Spica, it is a beneficial fixed star in Libra about equality. It is known to be a most fortunate star. It's the symbol that represents nourishing. It's an earth and mother and bountiful harvest type of energy. It's a refined star that leads to a greatest success with little or no harm done. It says this star gives goodwill and opportunities, luck, and protection. And because it's at 24 degrees with the sun and Juno, this is partnership energy that can be beneficial and protected with Spica there. It's institutional energy. The government may step in, may be able to help in some way. There might be something there. So it is a big T square, Mars in a big T square with all of that. You see Mars down here in Cancer. Stress and tension from Mars, okay? Stress and tension. But this is also square energy. It's square energy with Juno and Spica and the sun squaring the Mars energy, squaring soldiers, squaring masculine energy, squaring Mars and Cancer, which can be difficult. It can be a person with a weapon. And we think of domestic violence even because Cancer energy is in the home and it's childhood. It's childhood. And Mars, you heard me talk about Mars when they were young, how it can be difficult, right? And we think of the United States and how many youngsters we have killing classmates who are young. I mean, they're young, 14 years old, killing kids who are even younger sometimes, right? And it's a sad state of affairs that we're in. So this full moon energy is a completion and a let go. Hopefully it's a release in all the Mars vices, all the Mars keywords of things in your life where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to be done with this. I need to be done with the war. I need to be done with fighting. Can we just all get along, literally? Can we find other ways as opposed to being violent and using weapons? Can we have an end to that? And can the feminine energy have a place at the table, be acknowledged and recognized? Or the flip side of it is, will the feminine energy realize that its rights are being stripped away and do what they need to do for this battle that has been waged upon them and vote so that they don't lose any more rights? She's at a critical degree here. Venus at 29, critical degree of shared values, Scorpio energy. This can be scars, this can be wounds, this can be trauma and vulnerabilities. There can be an opportunity for healing. It's Venus at critical 29 degrees. 29 can be someone of power because it's 29. It's shared value. So we think the stock market, shared risk. We think of insurance money. We think of inheritances, 29 degrees. All right. And then I also have drawn in Mercury because she's a sibling and also in Scorpio. And she's at 5 degrees here, 5 degrees. Okay. So they communicate. These two communicate both in Scorpio, shared resources, shared values. It's not mine, it's ours. That's Scorpio energy. And it's always going to be willing to fight for what is ours. That's Scorpio energy. All right. So we think of the natural resources of the planet. And real quick on the chart, you also see strong square here from that Mercury at 5 degrees in Scorpio. We have we have Pandora, the other P. Pandora's box at 5 in Leo, along with Vulcan at 4. So there's something strong and difficult with the fixed signs here that can be very challenging. Anytime there's a fixed signed event, it's challenging in hell because no one's going to budge. Both are like, no, this is the way it's going to be done, damn it. So it's difficult. It's stress and tension. Just so you know, a few days before the full moon, a few days before the 17th, and a couple of days after, you might want to kind of prepare yourself just for the stress and tension and the fieriness of this energy. And the trick with the Aries energy is always to take a step back and take a few breaths, count to 10 before you speak, and just realize that time is really, if you're in a between a rock and a hard place, sometimes time, like just waiting a little bit to count to 10 before you make a response, before you react. And the goal is for things to kind of to move forward, right? But if nobody's talking, if there is no movement, if we're kind of at a standstill and and no one's surrendering type of thing, nobody wants to talk or negotiate, then we got a problem. But the beautiful thing is that there's a lot of negotiating energy at the table, because the exact opposition, there's also a lot here. So I'm very hopeful for this energy, because Libra is the diplomat. It says, let's compromise. Even though we do have even though we do have Black Moon Lilith here, and she's retrograding, we have a lot of all this stuff here, a lot of other supportive power, and someone who's in charge, the sun, and partnerships, and Spica, the fixed star, who can support us during this time, and who can give us the right words to use, so we're not creating enemies. So we're realizing, okay, fine, I don't get along with you. We don't even like each other, but we're on this project together. We've got this like same mentality towards this goal. We're on the same team, whether we like it or not. We just got to figure out how to be around each other without killing each other, and how to move forward. So that is the hope and the goal for this full moon, and the energy that will be there to support and supply us, because values are big with a Venus at 29. It's fixed energy, it's Scorpio. But hopefully Venus will somewhere be able to bring a little bit of peace and harmony and goodness and gifts even. Somebody likes some chocolates or some wines or whatever the hell they like. Use all the tools you got in the toolbox. I apologize. I didn't realize my face was on the screen the whole time. Oh, I messed up, guys. I'm so sorry. I normally do the video like this. I totally apologize. I'm bummed out now. I'm sorry. All right. Well, next time, hopefully I'll do better. I usually don't forget to do that, but I think we're good. I only showed us a few different things. And you got questions, comment below. Again, you need your chart, comment below. Let me know, and we'll take care of you. All right. Thanks for your time. I'll see you in the next one.